Most people spend their entire working lives building someone else's dream, and there is nothing wrong with that. Work is honorable. Loyalty is valuable. Showing up every day and giving your best to something that belongs to someone else, that is not weakness. That is character. But there is a difference, a very important difference, between someone who builds another person's dream and learns nothing from it, and someone who builds another person's dream and pays attention to every single thing they are doing while they do it. The first person ends up with a paycheck and a memory. The second person ends up with something else entirely. This is the story of Marcus Webb, a man who spent 12 years building the most successful furniture manufacturing business in his county, building it with his hands, with his ideas, with his relationships, with his problem-solving and his loyalty and his absolute refusal to do anything less than his absolute best. Building it for a man named Henry Caldwell who owned it, and then, when the time came, building something of his own, not by betraying Henry, not by stealing his customers or his methods or his secrets, but by applying everything 12 years of genuine work had taught him to his own name, his own sign, his own dream. This is that story, and I promise you, it is going to change the way you think about the work you are doing right now, even if that work belongs to someone else. Marcus Webb was born in 1951 in a small town in rural North Carolina, the second of 4 children. His father worked at a tobacco processing plant. His mother cleaned houses 3 days a week and managed the remaining 4 with the efficiency of someone who had learned to stretch every resource to its absolute limit. They were not a family that talked about dreams, not because they did not have them, but because the distance between where they were and where dreams lived seemed too large to make the conversation useful. What they talked about instead was work, showing up, doing what was asked, being reliable, being honest. These were the values Marcus absorbed before he was old enough to question them, and they would serve him, though not always in the ways he initially expected. Marcus was good with his hands from childhood, the kind of boy who could fix things without being shown, who looked at a broken object and understood intuitively how it was supposed to work, and therefore how it had stopped working. His father noticed and quietly encouraged it. Not with praise. His father was not a man who praised easily, but with access, tools left out where Marcus could reach them, projects assigned in the way that fathers assign things to sons they believe in. Fix this. See what you can do with that. Marcus always did something with it. By the time he was 16, he had rebuilt a lawnmower engine from parts, repaired the front porch his father had been meaning to fix for 2 years, built a small cabinet for his mother's kitchen out of scrap wood that she used for the rest of her life. He did not think of these things as accomplishments. He thought of them as just what he did. He graduated high school in 1969, did not go to college. The family could not support it, and Marcus did not pursue alternatives. He found work, the way young men with good hands and no particular direction find work. One thing leading to another, a construction crew, a carpentry shop, a brief period at a manufacturing plant that was louder and more impersonal than anything he was built for. He was 26 years old and drifting, not unhappily, but without destination, when he walked into Henry Caldwell's furniture workshop on a Tuesday morning in 1977. Henry Caldwell was 51 years old when Marcus met him, a compact, precise man with a workshop that was organized to a standard that Marcus had never seen before. Every tool in its designated place, every piece of wood stored by type and grade, every project in a designated stage of completion. Henry Caldwell's furniture workshop was not large. 6 employees, including himself. A showroom at the front of the building that displayed 12 pieces at any given time. But the quality of what came out of that workshop was the kind of quality that made people drive from 3 counties away to buy it. Henry made furniture the way some people make art. Not quickly, not cheaply, with an absolute refusal to allow anything to leave the building that was not exactly right. He had started the business in 1958 with a single workbench and a set of tools that had belonged to his own father. Built it over 19 years into something that carried his name with genuine weight. Henry Caldwell furniture meant something in that part of North Carolina. When Marcus walked in looking for work, Henry almost turned him away. He was particular about who he allowed into his workshop. Not because of ego, because of standards. He had learned that the wrong person in the wrong environment does not just underperform, they damage the environment itself. He made Marcus do something before agreeing to an interview. He handed him a piece of wood with a minor defect and asked him to find it. Marcus turned the piece over in his hands for about 30 seconds, then put his finger on the defect, a hairline grain irregularity that would have caused a problem at a specific stage of finishing if not addressed. Most people would have missed it. Henry hired him that afternoon, not with excitement, with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has been looking for something specific and found it. Chapter 3. The Learning Years. 10:30, 16 o'clock. The first 3 years Marcus worked for Henry were the most educationally intensive of his life. Not because Henry was a teacher in any formal sense. Henry barely explained anything. He demonstrated, he showed, he expected watching, he expected application. He had zero tolerance for the same mistake twice, and infinite patience for someone genuinely trying to understand. Marcus watched everything, not just the woodworking, the business, how Henry talked to suppliers, how he priced work, how he handled a client who was unhappy with something, how he managed the workshop schedule so that multiple projects moved forward simultaneously without any of them suffering, how he made decisions about which work to take and which to decline, because Henry declined work regularly. Work that was not the right fit, work with timelines that did not allow for the quality he required, work from clients who had given him the impression they would be difficult to satisfy. Marcus found this fascinating. "You turn down money?" he asked once. Henry looked at him for a moment. "I turn down problems," he said. "Money that comes with the wrong problems costs more than it pays." Marcus wrote that down in his head. He wrote a lot of things down in his head during those early years, not with any specific plan, but with the instinct of someone who knows they are in the presence of knowledge worth keeping. He was not thinking about his own business. Not yet. He was thinking about being the best he could be at the work in front of him. And being the best he could be at the work in front of him required understanding not just the craft, but everything around the craft. He noticed things Henry did not notice he was noticing. The specific suppliers whose wood was consistently better. The client relationships that generated repeat business versus the ones that were one-time transactions. The types of pieces that sold most reliably and the types that sat in the showroom. The workshop inefficiencies that slowed production without improving quality. He did not share these observations immediately. He was too new, too aware of how much he did not yet know, but he stored them, all of them, against a future he had not yet defined. Chapter 4. Becoming Essential. 16 o'clock, 21:30. By 1982, 5 years into his time with Henry, Marcus Webb had become something specific in that workshop. The person Henry trusted most, not because Marcus had sought that position, but because he had simply, consistently, quietly, over 5 years, earned it. When Henry had a problem he did not know how to solve, he started coming to Marcus, not always openly. Henry was not a man who easily admitted uncertainty, but he would position himself near Marcus's workbench when something was bothering him, and Marcus learned to recognize the positioning, and would offer something that sounded like a thought rather than a solution. "I was wondering about something. What if we tried?" And Henry would listen, and usually implement, and occasionally acknowledge. Never fully, never with the specificity Marcus deserved, but enough. Marcus had also by this point become the primary relationship manager with 3 of Henry's most valuable clients. Not by design, by default. One client had developed a preference for dealing with Marcus because Marcus remembered everything about their projects without needing to be reminded. Another because Marcus had solved a problem with a delivery timeline that Henry had not been able to solve. The third simply because Marcus made them feel heard in a way that Henry, brilliant craftsman, imperfect communicator, sometimes did not. Marcus handled these relationships with the same quiet competence he applied to everything. He did not leverage them. He did not make Henry feel threatened by them. He was loyal, genuinely, deliberately loyal, because Marcus had made a decision early in his time with Henry that he would give this work everything he had, not as a strategy, as a standard. If your name is attached to something, even someone else's something, you give it your best. That is who Marcus Webb was. It was a Thursday evening in the autumn of 1985. Henry asked Marcus to stay after the other employees had left. They sat in the workshop, Marcus on a stool at his bench, Henry in the old wooden chair he kept near the door. Henry was 59 years old. Marcus was 34. Henry looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "I want to talk to you about where this is going," he said. Marcus waited. "I am not going to run this forever," Henry said. "My knees are bad. My back is worse. I started this when I was 32. I am tired in ways I was not tired 10 years ago." He paused. "I do not have family to leave it to. My son wants nothing to do with furniture. My daughter lives in Atlanta." Marcus said nothing. He had sensed this conversation was coming, not the specific content, but the approaching weight of it. "I want to ask you something directly," Henry said, "and I want a direct answer." "Of course," Marcus said. "Do you want to own this business?" The question sat in the air between them. Marcus looked around the workshop, at the tools, at the wood, at the pieces in various stages of completion, at the organization, and the standards, and the 19-year reputation that lived in every corner. "No," he said. Henry looked at him. "No? I want to build my own," Marcus said. "I have for a while. I just was not ready to say it out loud." Henry was quiet for a long time. Then he said something Marcus did not expect. "Good," he said. "I was hoping that was the answer." Marcus looked at him. "Why?" "Because a man who wants to own something he built is more useful to me for the next few years than a man who is already thinking about what he is inheriting." He leaned forward. "Stay with me until I am ready to close. Give me your best until the last day, and I will give you everything I know before you go." Marcus reached across and shook Henry's hand. "Deal," he said, and meant it completely. "I want to pause here, because I want you to notice something about this moment. Two men, an employer and an employee, having the most honest conversation that most workplaces never allow. Henry telling Marcus the truth about where things were going, Marcus telling Henry the truth about what he wanted, and both of them deciding, because of that honesty, to give each other their absolute best for whatever time remained. That kind of conversation is rare. It is rare because honesty requires trust, and trust requires the consistent behavior of both people over years. Marcus and Henry had built that trust over 8 years of genuine work. That is what made this moment possible. If this story is speaking to you, subscribe to Ember and Echo right now. We share stories like Marcus and Henry every single week. Real people, real relationships, real lessons about work and loyalty and building something that lasts. Subscribe. It is free. And let us see what Marcus does with everything Henry taught him. The 3 years that followed that Thursday evening conversation were the most intentional of Marcus's working life. He was no longer just doing his job. He was studying everything. With Henry's full knowledge and deliberate cooperation, Henry began doing something he had never done in 25 years of running the business. He explained his decisions, not to all the employees, to Marcus. When he priced a piece, he walked Marcus through the calculation. When he evaluated a supplier, he shared the reasoning. When he declined a project, he articulated why, in terms Marcus could apply to his own future decisions. He opened his books, not entirely, but significantly, and showed Marcus what a furniture business actually looked like financially. Not just the craft side, the real side, the margins, the cash flow patterns, the seasonal variations, the relationship between reputation and pricing power. Marcus absorbed all of it. He also began doing something of his own during those 3 years. Quietly, carefully, he saved. Not extravagantly, his salary was comfortable but not large, but with discipline. He reduced his personal expenses to what was necessary, moved to a smaller apartment, drove his truck another 3 years beyond when he had planned to replace it, put every spare dollar into a separate account that he did not touch. Not because Henry had told him to, because Marcus had watched Henry carefully for 8 years, and one of the things he had watched was how Henry talked about the beginning, about starting with almost nothing and making it work through discipline and craft and patience. Marcus was not going to start with nothing. He was going to start with savings, and knowledge, and a reputation that he had spent 12 years earning. Henry Caldwell's furniture workshop closed in December 1988. Not in failure, by choice. Henry held a closing gathering for his clients and suppliers, thanked them for 30 years of trust, sold his equipment at fair prices to people who would use it well, and on the last day gave Marcus a letter. Not long. Henry was not a man for long letters, but specific. It named 3 clients who had told Henry they intended to follow whoever he recommended when they needed furniture next. It listed the 2 suppliers Henry considered the most reliable and the specific contact names within those companies. It outlined 3 pieces of advice for running a small craft business that Henry had learned the hard way and wanted Marcus to have without the learning cost. Marcus read it standing in the empty workshop, then folded it carefully and put it in his shirt pocket, close to his chest, where it stayed for a long time. Marcus Webb opened Webb Custom Furniture in January 1989, a small workshop, 1 room. Used equipment he had purchased thoughtfully over the previous year. A modest sign above the door. No employees, just Marcus. And 12 years of knowledge, and a letter in his shirt pocket. The first month was slow. He had expected that. He used the time to set up his systems exactly the way he wanted them. Not copying Henry's organization exactly, but informed by it. Improved where he had seen improvements were possible. Adapted to his own way of working. He contacted the 3 clients Henry's letter had named. All 3 came to see the new workshop. All 3 placed orders within the first 2 months. Not large orders, but enough to cover his costs and leave him something to work with. He handled those first orders with a focus that he had never applied to anything before, because these were not Henry's clients anymore. They were his, and everything they experienced in this workshop would determine whether they came back, and whether they told anyone else. He delivered the first completed piece, a dining table for one of the 3 original clients, 3 days before the promised date. The client ran her hand along the surface, looked at the joinery, opened and closed the leaf extension several times, then looked at Marcus. "Henry told me you were worth trusting," she said. He was right. Marcus drove home that evening and sat in his truck for a while. Not from sadness, from the specific weight of a moment that means more than it can immediately express. He had spent 12 years building someone else's dream, and the reputation he had built while doing it was now building his own. By 1995, 6 years after opening, Webb Custom Furniture had 4 employees, a larger workshop, a waiting list, not famous, not in the way that appears in newspapers, but known, in the specific way that quality becomes known in a community. Word of mouth, one satisfied client telling another, a reputation that had been seeded by 12 years of Marcus's work under Henry's name, and was now growing under his own. He was not Henry Caldwell. He did not try to be. He had his own approach, his own aesthetic preferences, his own client relationships built in his own way. But the foundation, the standards, the discipline, the understanding of what craft actually requires, those had been built in Henry's workshop, and Marcus knew it. He never hid it. When clients asked about his background, he told them about Henry, about 12 years of learning from someone who did not compromise on quality. He said it not as modesty, but as acknowledgement, because Marcus understood something that not everyone in his position understands. Your success does not erase what taught you. It honors it. The work you do for someone else, if you do it fully, if you pay attention, if you give it everything, is not wasted on their dream. It is investment in your own, even if you cannot see it while you are doing it. Marcus told this story to a young man named Derek, who came to work for him in 1997. Derek was 22 years old, talented, impatient, already talking about his own business before he had been in the workshop 3 months. Marcus listened to him one afternoon and then said, "Can I ask you something?" Derek nodded. "What do you know right now that someone would pay for?" Derek thought about it. "I am good with my hands," he said. "So is everyone in this building," Marcus said. "What else?" Derek was quiet. "That is the work," Marcus said. "Not opening your own business, not putting your name on a sign. The work is becoming someone that people would follow when you do. He paused. I spent 12 years building Henry Caldwell's business. I gave it everything I had. Not because I was planning to use it later, because that was who I wanted to be. And when the time came, everything I had given to his business had made me into someone capable of building my own. He looked at Derek. The dream you are working toward right now, it is not separate from the work you are doing today. It is being built by it. Every day you give everything here, you are investing in yourself. Even though my name is on the sign. Derek worked for Marcus for 7 years. Left in 2004 to open his own workshop. Marcus gave him a letter on the last day. Not long, but specific. I think about Marcus often. About a 26-year-old man walking into a workshop on a Tuesday morning, with good hands and no particular direction, and choosing, not once but every single day for 12 years, to give everything he had to work that belonged to someone else. Not naively, not without awareness of his own ambitions, but with the understanding that the work itself was the education. That every problem he solved, every relationship he built, every standard he maintained, was making him into someone who, when the time came, had something to bring to his own name. I think about what he built under Henry's sign, and what he built under his own, and I think they are not two separate things. They are one continuous act of becoming. Whatever work you are doing right now, even if it is someone else's dream, give it everything. Not because they deserve it, although they might, but because you are the one being shaped by how you choose to work. The habits you build here follow you there. The standards you keep here define what you are capable of there. The relationships you build here, as Marcus learned, sometimes walk through your door when you finally open one. Build someone else's dream the way you would build your own. And when the time comes to build your own, you will know exactly how.